Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing you my thoughts on the recent release of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 exclusively for the Switch. Now this video is not going to be super structured. I'm just going to kind of be freely talking over some footage with regards to how I think the game is. You know, is it a good RPG? Is it a bad RPG? What are some of the good things and bad things about it? And I've got a lot to say about this game in particular as someone who hasn't finished it but has spent well over 60 hours playing the game itself. So for those who don't know what it is, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is what I would call a strategic action-y RPG for the Switch. It's one of many in a series of Xenogear, Xenosaga, Xenoblade, just a bunch of different games that all kind of exist within their own universes. They all reference each other. Heck, even World of Final Fantasy has a Xenogear-style boss in it. So the series is quite popular, and over the years has definitely gathered a lot of fans. So as someone who plays RPGs, this one was highly recommended to me, or at least I was told I should be anticipating it because it was supposed to be a really big launch for the Switch. So did it hold up to everybody kind of just really looking forward to it all this time ever since it was revealed for the Switch? Let's go into that a little bit more. So first of all, I want to say that in terms of an adventure, I think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has hit the nail on the head. I've been recently kind of desiring like a long grind. You know, as an RPG fan, I do appreciate RPGs that have grinds, but they move at kind of a faster pace. World of Final Fantasy, while it's not a fast game, the grind in that game is somewhat manageable. That's the most recent kind of grindy RPG that I've played. But this game takes adventure to a whole nother level. Giant open areas that aren't always safe for you to explore. You're going to find secrets and pits everywhere. You're going to be highly motivated to find as many party members and blades, which we'll get into in a second here, in order to reach every corner of the world. And in terms of an adventurous feeling, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 hits the nail on the head. Other things that are on point, definitely the OST. I'm, like I said, over 60 hours into the game, and I don't think there's a single track I've heard where I haven't been that is a beautiful piece of music. Whether it's, you know, hardcore and it's supposed to get you hyped for the moment, or it's something a little more subtle and like a snowier church-like town. They've really hit the OST on the head. And even if you don't end up playing this game, at least check out the OST. The story, full of anime and RPG tropes. It gets a little tiresome, especially early on, but the characters themselves are at least entertaining enough to keep you going to the point where it actually does get interesting. I can say that 60 hours in, I've had some interesting moments, but it's gotten progressively more interesting as time has gone on. It's going to get you through those tropes, but when it does, I think you'll probably be satisfied with the characters and the way that they interact with the story. As for the combat, it's hit or miss. I'd say that the first 3 to 4 hours are the least interesting point of the combat, and for an RPG, I'd say that that's standard. You start off basically just being able to auto-attack and using the occasional skill. It quickly improves with tutorials over the first 12 to 15 hours. I know it doesn't sound quick, but considering the number of activities that you end up doing after the first 4 or 5 hours, it goes really fast for you to learn the rest of the stuff. And honestly, sometimes you can learn things on your own before the tutorials even teach them to you. So sometimes the tutorials are just a reminder of things you may have already figured out for yourself, and I never really felt like the game was staggering my progress by waiting too long to teach me new things. It felt like every time they did teach me a new thing, it was very much worth my time to stop and read, and that it wasn't bogging down my experience. That's something that can happen big time. It didn't feel like, for example, Final Fantasy 13 tutorials. It felt like a reasonable length, and I haven't run into them much. You can even purchase tutorials in-game using the in-game gold, and that's kind of weird, but at least it's there if you want to learn through that as opposed to learning through the game telling you itself. The flow of combat goes something like this. You have 3 characters that you can have in your party at any time, and these characters are called drivers. Each of these 3 drivers can have up to 3 blades equipped, though there are some special conditions regarding certain characters with that. You can swap between the blades based on a cooldown that can be improved through foods and other passive effects as well. When you're on a blade and you generate auto attacks, which as you may imagine happen automatically, you will gradually recharge these skills and be able to use them in a timely fashion. They highly encourage canceling auto attacks by using a skill right at the time an auto attack lands, and sometimes you can even cancel abilities, or blade arts as they're called, with other blade arts. So you start flowing through the combat and it starts to feel more actiony and less tactical, but you're still being tactical about it. It's just not as slow. You got to go through the tactical aspects much faster as you get later into the game, which is why it starts off really slow, but once you've gotten past those first few hours and you start getting a bunch of blade arts and you start getting more blades and you start being able to carry more blades at once, the amount of strategic options and the rate at which you actually fight in the combat itself goes up substantially. Once you've done enough blade arts, you can then use special attacks, which can be chained together to create a combo. By creating these combos, you put elemental orbs on the opponent. These elemental orbs will make it so that any subsequent combos that deal in the same elemental orbs deal less damage. However, you can then use a chain combo, which allows you to use all three characters in what is basically a giant iframe extravaganza, I guess. And you can use back-to-back-to-back blade arts in order to break the elemental orbs, deal an insanely increased amount of damage, and then restart the whole thing. You also have crowd control skills in the form of break, which will interrupt a current skill, topple, which will move an enemy onto the ground and leave them open and vulnerable to special attacks that can either deal more damage or launch them into the air. Once they're launched into the air, you can then deal more damage based on attacks that do more damage to launch targets, or you can smash them to the ground to get bonus loot or deal more damage. It's essentially one giant a crowd control chain, and there are other crowd control effects as well that you can access, but that one chain is another thing that complements the special skills because it can extend the amount of time you have to perform subsequent special. This is what I mean. Like, you look at the combat and it looks like nothing's really happening, but you're managing all these systems. You know, special attacks have other properties as well, such as being able to heal allies or deal more damage under certain conditions or seal away certain specific skill sets that an enemy may have. There's a lot of micromanagement to this combat, and it can be very satisfying at times. Now, all that being said, I've spent the first 6 minutes, I guess, of this video speaking about a lot of positives. You know, these are things that keep me playing even 60 hours in. That being said, it does have its fair share of issues. Some technical issues on the higher level. I've had some crashes in the game. I've had textures popping. I've had things not load in. So it sometimes feels like the Switch itself can't even handle the game that is on it. And that's whether or not it's docked or undocked in my experience. I've tried playing it about equal times, both about 30 hours docked, about 30 hours undocked. And I'd say restart your Switch every 4 to 5 hours. That seems to have stopped me from getting crashes and stops the texture popping. It's almost like the system overheats and then can't handle it anymore. Another thing is that the game says that it's, at least 80 hours for the story. And you know what? That's probably right. But a lot of the times it feels like it's 80 hours due to what I feel is unnecessary padding of how long everything takes to do. Even just the most common enemies can sometimes take you upwards of 1 to 3 minutes, especially when you're first learning the combat system and you don't exactly have the strongest of blades in order to execute enemies quickly. On top of that, menus sometimes feel unresponsive. They take so long, especially when it comes to acquiring new blades. Blades are acquired via a gacha style system. It doesn't use any real money, but it is a gacha style system where you basically find cores on the ground and the cores become random blades. Common cores are most often weak. The rare cores are more often stronger. The legendary cores are usually like 3-star and up and have a higher chance of giving you rare blades, which have unique properties. And then you can find cores that have dedicated, like will always be this blade. Because of that, the experience each player has, the rate at which they get through certain parts of the game can be quite drastically different, especially if you roll like a really strong blade like Xenoblade, for example, is one of my favorite blades that I have right now. But even just the opening of a single blade takes like 30 to 45 seconds. Even sending a blade away takes like 8 to 10 seconds, and sometimes getting from point A to B is kind of slow, and then you have enemies that take forever. So while it is an 80-hour plus story, not including post-game content, it doesn't feel like it earned that because it's I guess, well-designed. It just feels like they padded things just to make the experience longer, not to necessarily make the experience better, if that makes sense. Oh, by the way, speaking of the experience, I would highly recommend if you're playing this. I don't have a Pro Controller because I don't feel like giving Nintendo $70 to get a real one. I've been using the Joy-Cons. These things do not feel adequate for this game. I'll be straight up honest. If you don't have a Pro Controller and you're someone who has a Switch, this may be the game that forces you to get one. If you're someone who plays your Switch often, you probably have one already and this isn't an issue, but I haven't had great experiences with Joy-Cons on this thing. Even just for the basic controls, even when they work perfectly fine, they just don't feel like the right level of responsiveness, especially for one of the mini games called Tiger, which is required to progress one of the character's blades. It just doesn't feel good to use in that mini game in particular, and sometimes even just navigating the world, especially when they ask you to do platforming and stuff. I don't understand the desire to do platforming in this game. It's just the characters do not control well enough for it. Another big frustration I have is with the artificial intelligence of your party members. So you can only ever control one party member at a time, at least where I am 60 plus hours into the game. It's whoever your party leader is, which is the first person to the left on your party list when you go to actually swap around party members. The other ones operate automatically based on an AI that, based on the role of the blades that they have equipped, will kind of learn what it's supposed to be doing. Now, the tanks kind of naturally know to keep it facing in a direction. The healers eventually figure out that they don't want to be in front of the boss, and the attackers tend to go for the advantageous positions for their different skills. That being said, I've had nothing but bad experiences with AI. You know, them not using a heal despite very clearly having the heals available, stopping to run away and grab potions, but only doing it about half the time, even though they're very much necessary for survival at the current moment. I've had AI just straight up walk into water, which resets all their cooldowns, by the way, because you're fighting an enemy on a body of water and the enemy is too big. There's a lot of design oversights here that feel like they designed it to be smart, but they didn't design the game around designing them to be smart. There's one enemy in particular that frustrated the ever-loving hell out of me, and that was an enemy that literally the only places to fight him are on like small bodies of land surrounded by bodies of water. And every time I try fighting him, in most of the areas, I found one area where it seems like it's okay to actually fight him and the AI won't screw up. But my AI literally will be in a safe spot and then just run into the water because they're trying to do something that their role's AI is telling them to do, which resets all their cooldowns, which means they can't contribute to the fight really at all. They'll like, oh, I'm in the water, I'll walk out of the water. Okay, and no, let me walk back into the water because I'm trying to get to the rear of the boss. And it's a pain, man. The AI just performs so inadequately compared to the player, and the fact that you can't swap characters mid-battle just exacerbates it. There's so many times where I'm like, you know what, can I just be in charge of this person for this time? Like, let me be in charge of the person who I have tanking, and then let me take charge of the healer when things get crazy. But you can't do that. You gotta just leave it in the hands of the AI, and it infuriates me to no end. So with all the little menus that lag or don't operate functionally, or, you know, how long certain things can take, there's a lot of frustration. This game does just endlessly frustrate you. Enemies joining into the fight when you want nothing to do with them. Flying enemies you can't even see because your camera's not set up to see them. Level 90 enemies just waltzing up to you and beating the crap out of you because, oh well, you were in their area, even if there were level 5s in the same area. It's gonna happen. But you know what? At the same time, I had a lot of fun, and I'm having a lot of fun. So it's really hard for me to judge this game, I guess, on a scale of 1 to 10, because it just has so many things that my common sense tells me this is bad. Like, it's not a good thing that it's designed this way, but I'm having fun. And you know what? It's a video game. Isn't that kind of like the only thing that matters, is that I'm having fun? I guess the frustrations come with the stories I'll tell people later. You know, hey, this pissed me off, that pissed me off, but, you know, maybe it means I don't go back and play it a second time ever. But for the time being, at least when it's working and there's not something silly like that enemy in the water, I've gotten a hang of it to the point where it's really fun trying to maximize combos and figure out exactly what I need to be doing strategy-wise and gear-wise, which blades I want to be using, finding secrets all over the place. If you go around a corner and go, you know, there's probably a treasure chest here, you know, you're probably right. And that feels good. It feels like it's rewarding my exploration and my need to complete everything. So if you want an RPG that is tactical, that is strategic, even if it comes with certain flaws that'll happen in the combat itself, it's got some slow menus, it's got some slow progressing things such as long battles that, and I mean long battles like every battle is long, not like some battles are long. There's definitely longer battles, but some battles are just ridiculous. But at the same time, you know, you're enjoying mastering that and getting through things faster. Every bit of frustration has something that you can probably do to help overcome it, or something you may enjoy about it. So it's a nice balance of fun and frustration, even for a game that feels like it's kind of being held back by the hardware that it's on. Honestly, there's so many other things I could say about it in regards to all the microsystems in this game, but honestly, it would take me hours to go through all the microsystems that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has. So I'll say, I guess if I had to look at it objectively, it's like an 8 out of 10. As an RPG fan, it's an 8 out of 10. If I wasn't an RPG fan, this game I would probably not last more than 5-6 hours playing, just because it's not welcoming. It's only for hardcore, even old school hardcore RPG fans, a very specific subset in my opinion. It's not for your average everyday RPG player, as opposed to being to the hardcore fans. Like I said, I could go on forever, but I'm going to stop it there. I feel like I've covered the most major points that when I'm playing, I'm thinking about them actively. I'm sure there are other little things I'm forgetting, but you guys can discuss those in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. I might do a couple of Xenoblade videos. Like, there's one trick with auto attack canceling that has some pros and cons that I've had some discussions with people about. So we might see a video on that, especially later today. So thank you for watching. I will see all you fine ladies and gentlemen in the next video, so I'll see you then. Until then, take care.